Congressional Democrats are calling for an investigation into the firing of federal prosecutor Geoffrey Berman. Now, his office was pursuing cases connected to some of President Trump's close allies. Catherine Herridge has more on that.
Berman was first selected back in 2018 by then Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who cited his more than 3 decades of experience. Critics say Berman's sudden removal raises more questions about Barr's independence.
What did they know? When did they know it? And why did they do it?
Democrats say Attorney General William Barr's decision to fire the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York reeks of potential corruption.
He certainly deserves impeachment, but again, that's a waste of time because the Republicans in the Senate won't look at that.
The standoff began late Friday when Barr said Berman was stepping down, and the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Jay Clayton, was tapped to replace him. Berman had secured a guilty plea from Michael Cohen, the president's former personal attorney, and was in the process of prosecuting 2 associates of Rudy Giuliani, the president's current lawyer. However, later that evening, Berman fired back against Barr, saying, "I have not resigned and have no intention of resigning.
I'm just here to do my job."
On Saturday morning, Berman showed up for work in Lower Manhattan. A short time later, Barr said Berman was offered other Justice Department jobs, but after indicating he had no intention of resigning, Barr wrote, "I have asked the president to remove you, and he has done so." Before his weekend rally, President Trump said it was Barr's call.
Well, I don't get involved. I just don't get involved. But the president has to sign a document or, I guess, give it the okay.
Senate Republican Tim Scott said he was not concerned Berman's removal will affect any inquiries.
Everyone in the DOJ works at the pleasure of the president, number one. Number two, there's no indication whatsoever that whatever is being investigated will not continue to move on.
For now, Berman's deputy will be the acting U.S. attorney. Critics point to Jay Clayton's close ties to Wall Street and his lack of experience as a federal prosecutor. One of the president's top allies, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, told CBS News he will not move forward until there's sign-off from the 2 New York senators, and both have indicated they won't give it. Catherine Herridge, CBS News, the Justice Department.
All right, for some legal perspective and analysis on all of this, let us bring in CBSN legal contributor Keir Dougall. He's also a former assistant U.S. attorney for New York's Eastern District. So Keir, we spoke earlier to Weijia Jiang about this, and I was trying to understand why. I mean, when this all started happening, and then you had he said, she said, from the President of the United States to the Attorney General William Barr to Mr. Berman himself, I just thought to myself, man, they can't even do a Saturday night or Friday night massacre correctly. And for people who want a historical reference to that from 1973, just Google it. But it just made me, I just don't understand what the whole rationale was for this, given that Berman's number 2 is going to be leading the Southern District now. So what do you make of this firing and the timing?
So that appears to be the key, is that the way that Mr. Berman handled this, it was to ensure that his career deputy would in fact be the one running the office. We really need to step back and put this all in context, and Catherine Herridge mentioned it, but it's about the fact that the Southern District is reported to be investigating things for which the president is very interested. Let's remember that Michael Cohen was prosecuted by the Southern District in relation to the Stormy Daniels porn star hush money payment, in which Mr. Trump, President Trump, was alleged to be a co-conspirator. So the president is directly implicated in that investigation, potentially investigated in the Giuliani investigation. And look, we all know that if the subject of an investigation gets to control the investigation, gets to control the evidence that's going to be brought forth, you're not going to find very much. So with respect to Senator Scott, there certainly are circumstances that give rise to concerns about the rule of law and the independence of the Justice Department here. It is, in my opinion, good news that the career deputy will be the acting U.S. attorney as of now. That's very important, but there are reasons to be concerned.
So I guess at the core of it, though, is do you feel like some of these ongoing investigations into some of the president's allies or friends, do you think they'll be impacted by this? That was kind of like what Vlad was sort of getting at is, there's this big public mess, but ultimately you kind of just end up with somebody who was working right under Berman and presumably will continue the same course of action. But what's your take on it, Keir?
So, look, the circumstances in which this happened, a Friday night press release looks like it's intended to avoid press scrutiny, which incorrectly or falsely says that the U.S. Attorney in Southern District in this important office is resigning, to be immediately rebuked and refuted by the U.S. Attorney himself, then the next morning to see the U.S. Attorney be fired instead after being praised for his excellent work the night before by the Attorney General in that initial press release. These circumstances are incredibly unusual. They're very unusual. So there's definitely a reason to be concerned that something fishy, something honestly stinky is occurring with respect to what's going in the office. Given the important position that office holds, given the investigations that are reportedly being conducted by the office, there are significant reasons to be concerned. Look, career prosecutors in the Southern District, if they believe that political influence is occurring, they can report to the Inspector General of the Justice Department. There are safety valves here. We saw in the Washington, D.C. office, prosecutors, when they believed that political influence or inappropriate actions were being taken, they withdrew from the case. So, there are signals that we can still be looking for. I am comforted by the fact that a career prosecutor and not a political appointee will be running the office in the short term, but I am very concerned, and I will be looking for those signals if they should come.
All right, let's turn here to former National Security Advisor John Bolton and his new book, The Room Where It Happened. We should note that the book is published by Simon & Schuster, a division of Viacom CBS. With the new information alleged by Bolton, do you expect that the House or the Senate will issue a subpoena, and could Bolton fight it?
So he could certainly fight it. On the same grounds that we've seen before, he could potentially claim immunity. He could claim executive privilege. He could claim that he could try to claim that a congressional investigation was outside of its legitimate scope. Based on the reported statements that I thought I heard from Jerry Nadler, it seems unlikely that they will do so. But certainly I haven't read the book. I saw the interview last night, and I've read some of the press reports. His information seems relevant to the impeachment inquiry. I think we need to be careful, though, now with what he's alleging, because he obviously has an incentive to sell a book. His statements in the book are not under oath, and they are not subject to cross-examination, even though they appear to be damning with respect to the administration and concerning overall.
So White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro said that Bolton could possibly face jail time because this book is being released. What are the possible consequences? We know that the White House would have already gone over the book with a fine-tooth comb, telling Bolton what he could and could not include, and now that its release is, tomorrow, we've been hearing over the past week from the White House that there are all sorts of things that shouldn't be permitted, that should be classified or restricted. What exactly is Bolton facing here?
So that's a great question, Anne-Marie, and it's a tricky one. Because Mr. Bolton took a job that put him in the position to know or have to know national security information, he was required to sign non-disclosure agreements where he agreed not to disclose the stuff, important national security or other secret information. And if he intended to write a book like this one, he would go through a so-called pre-publication review. Now, it looks like, from what I've seen reported, he went through part of that review and then didn't finish it. So there's a question whether or not, in fact, he has complied with that contractual obligation. If he hasn't, and if in fact he's disclosed national security information or secret information, he could be subject to prosecution. Look, critics of this system say that it gives the administration too much leeway, the rules about pre-publication review. That really, I think, those criticisms may be valid, but that's for another day. Bolton had the rules, he has to deal with the rules that we have today. And it appears that there is a significant concern that he may not have followed those rules and thus opened himself up to losing any profits from this book and potential criminal prosecution.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about this, Keir and Anne-Marie, that, there are Republican allies of the president who are angry, and they're calling Mr. Bolton a liar. They're saying that it's not true, and they're saying that he's left himself open to possible jail time. Liberals and members of the Democratic Party are saying that, he should have come and testified. Bolton is saying, look, even if he had testified, there is perhaps a kernel of truth to this. Bolton is saying that even if he had testified, it might not have made a difference. What we saw happen, Keir, when we were sitting, you, me, and Anne-Marie, for hours and hours watching the impeachment hearings, was that everybody was locked into their political positions. It didn't matter what they were hearing, it didn't matter what people were testifying. It only mattered politically how they were going to ultimately vote during the entire impeachment trial.
Right, and so, I mean, to be blunt, in that circumstance, what Bolton is saying is that he arrogated unto himself the decision that of what he knew the Senate was going to already do. He decided that the evidence that he had, which appears to be important and relevant, was not going to be of such that it would sway any minds, which I think perhaps he's right, perhaps he's not, but that's why we have trials. And I would assume that the senators that he's referring to, that, he says, my evidence is going to make a difference. They were sworn in the Senate trial to do impartial justice. And what he's suggesting is that they weren't going to do that. And so it's very troubling, the position that he's taken to sort of say, well, I know better, and it wouldn't have mattered. That's very concerning, frankly, to me and to the rule of law and to the impeachment process that we watched.
So, Keir, just a totally different topic. The Justice Department has been investigating the origins of the FBI investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. The Attorney General, Barr, says that by this summer there should be some developments. As quickly as possible, just remind people what this investigation is all about and what will you be looking for?
Right, so this is an effort, according to reports, to look into the origins of the Mueller investigation, the so-called Crossfire Hurricane investigation. We're seeing part of this play out right now in the effort to dismiss the criminal prosecution with respect to Mr. Flynn. In my opinion, looking at the filings and understanding the background to this, and the Inspector General's finding that the Mueller investigation was properly commenced, had a proper basis. I will be looking to see if there's any new information with respect to that. I would be surprised if Mr. Durham found that there was no basis at all for the investigation or prosecution of Mr. Flynn. But there are some flies in the ointment. There's a problem with the Carter Page FISA investigation. There may be some other issues that he discovers. It's hard to know right now, but those are the things that I'll be looking for.
All right. Keir, always great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.